What's up guys, Houndish here, and today we're jumping in with some Destiny 2 news, and with Season of the Witch launching, initially Bungie give us some updates and warnings on known issues with the new content, and that does include missing loot and items which literally don't exist, so that's interesting and we'll cover that, and then we'll talk about some exotic quests this season, the returning exotic weapon, Krotazen loot and hidden items. But we'll also cover some new weapons in the final shape, the roadmap for Year 7, and we've got a bunch more to talk about in the video today. So, as always guys, I hope you enjoy this one, and if you do, a rating below would very much help us out. But without further delay, let's get into it. And so initially, we do have a few updates from Bungie here which are worth mentioning. And firstly, Bungie Help said that the phosphorescent shader currently visible in collections is not an actual item, and instead was added to the game unintentionally. They add that it will be removed in a future update, and the Destiny 2 team said, it turns out that the shader actually doesn't exist, which is why it has a placeholder icon. So once again, it will be taken out of the game in an upcoming patch. Kind of a weird one there, but Bungie Help gives some further warnings and clarification, and they say transmat effects are now treated as a single item in a player's inventory, so players with a full inventory may see new items get pushed to or out of the postmaster, and so players should claim all items from the postmaster to avoid losing any unclaimed items. On top of that though, various exotics in the Monument of Lost Light can't be acquired, even if the player owns the correct DLC, so that's a known issue there. But also the Infinite Quiver and the Volatile Throne Bundles advertising art in the Eververse store is displayed using an incorrect shader. But finally they say Unstoppable Taken Phalanx are immune to receiving headshot damage. That's fun. But also that the Titan Shiver Strike doesn't benefit from the melee kickstart armor mod, but still consumes an armor charge. And finally, the Origin perk Specialization 2 artifact perk isn't overcharging Season 22 weapons. So those are all things which will presumably get updates in the near future. But Bungie Help also recognise a missing competitive division emblem, and they say they're investigating the issue for Season of the Witch, and they'll follow up with an update once they have more information to share. So there is supposed to be one, but there's a bug in the game at the moment which is blocking that from dropping. So keep those in mind, but here, there's an important update regarding the season content for any players who haven't started yet, and Bungie are investigating an issue where players are unable to replay the mission Invoke if they play through it before acquiring the seasonal quest, so players are encouraged not to play the mission until they acquire the Bladed Path quest. Obviously that mission does appear on the director regardless of quest progress, and some players who've completed it then can't progress with the quest itself. So again, for anyone affected by that, hopefully we'll get an update soon, and if you haven't started playing the season yet, just make sure you follow the actual quest steps and start with the quest before you do any of the activity content. Moving into some of the stuff here though, the new exotic armor pieces for this season can actually be acquired through the Vex Strike Force, so last season they were limited exclusively to Lost Sectors again, which was confusing because Bungie had said that new exotics would be earnable from Vex Strike Force moving forward. But fortunately this season, they have been added back into that event as we covered in a video yesterday, so if you want chances to unlock those, be sure to complete the Vex Strike Force, and that activity should be on a knockout system, so if you own all of the other exotics in the game. As far as I understand it, the new season exotics should more or less be guaranteed. Next up though, let's talk about an upcoming exotic quest and some items associated with the reprise raid for Crota's End. Obviously a spoiler warning is necessary, but I assumed that this was a little bit less spoilery for players who know what we're going to get from Crota's End anyway. And as we saw in some of the gameplay from the trailer, the Necrochasm is indeed returning as the raid exotic. But much like in D1, it doesn't necessarily appear to be a standard exotic drop from the final encounter in the raid. And while raid completion will be required, it looks like there is a quest element to this. So there's a hidden quest in the database called Bottomless Pit. 2 of the steps are classified, but there's one step that tells us to collect Essence of the Oversoul, and that's the exotic item we can see on screen right there. Not sure exactly how Essence of the Oversoul will drop, potentially by doing raid completions or encounters, and presumably as well completion of Crota's End is possibly going to reward the quest in order to earn the exotic. So yes, we will once again see a raid exotic quest for Season 22, and in terms of the perks for Necrochasm in D2, the intrinsic is Cursebringer, and precision final blows with the weapon trigger a Cursed Thrall explosion, and then final blows with Cursed Thrall explosions will refill the magazine. So a slight improvement over the version we had in D1 there by the sounds of it. On top of that though, it has the trait Desperation, and reloading after a precision final blow or a final blow with a Cursed Thrall explosion increases your rate of fire and improves stability and aim assist. So they're mixing things up a little bit in terms of what the Necrochasm will do, although it looks like it still maintains its general identity versus the D1 version. And then for the rest of the raid, Bungie Leaks on Twitter shared Crota's End returning weapons and their adept variants. And so from the image right there, the weapons that are coming back include the Swordbreaker shotgun and the LMG Songavir Yurt, the Scout Rifle, the Fangavir Yurt, as well as the Oversoul Edict Pulse Rifle, Word of Crota Hand Cannon, and the Abyss Defiant Auto Rifle. And so at least from what we see there, we don't get Light of the Abyss or Black Hammer, but in previous Reprise raids, Bungie have indeed not brought all of the weapons back, so especially with things like Black Hammer, it sort of makes sense, since we have the exotic Whisper of the Worm Sniper these days. But as we saw from that initial image, there will indeed be the adept variants of the weapons as well. And on top of that, Destiny Bulletin shared, there is a new Bungie rewards emblem to carry 10 Guardians through the Crota's End raid. And the emblem there is Hope Eater with one of the lamps from the Abyss. So it's certainly going to be cool to jump back into Crota's End next week on Friday when it returns, and let us know if you plan to dive into that raid. Other exotics that have been questified though, of course, include the Wishender exotic bow, and the quest for that is called Hunter's Remembrance, where Petrevenge sent a cryptic request for assistance, and we'll need to locate her in the Dreaming City and ask for details. Other steps for that thread though include purifying awoken mementos by hunting down 3 taken within the Shattered Throne, so that's more or less the same steps that we would have originally had, but just questified. And then we need to present purified awoken mementos to the statue of Ido before returning to Petra to pick up the Wishender. So for any folks who don't happen to have that exotic, there is a slightly better process to earn it now. And in terms of other exotics or secrets in the season, we'll have to see what we get down the road. But finally here, let's talk a little bit about Final Shape. At some point in the next few days, I'll probably round up the expansion reveal itself, but of course, beyond Final Shape, one of the big changes is that Bungie will be releasing episodes for Destiny, which sort of replaces the seasonal model as we know it right now. And instead of having 4 seasons a year, there'll be the initial expansion launch, which will be followed by 3 of these episodes. So the first episode begins in March of 2024, which of course is the month after the release of Final Shape, and this is called Echoes. And these episodes are released in 3 different acts. So Act 1 will last for 6 weeks, with Act 2 lasting for 6 weeks following that, and the final 6 weeks will be Act 3. And Echoes lists in new exotic weapon, as well as new exotic mission, and we can see as well that new quests, story, activities, general weapons, artifact mods, pass ranks, pass rewards, and armor are going to feature into these episodes. And of course, we'll see how it pans out in the game. On paper, it sounds pretty similar to Seasons regardless, but they're kind of mixing up the structure of it. Although it doesn't list things like dungeons, for instance, which we get at the moment, or other in-game stuff like reprised raids. But the second episode will be Revenant, and that lists the same types of rewards and 3 different acts once again, lasting 6 weeks each. And so that will mean each of these sort of episode releases will last for around 18 weeks. So Revenant is between July and October, and then from November to the following February, we'll get Heresy. It'll certainly be interesting to see what that content flow is like. Again, on paper, there are lots of things very similar to Seasons, but Bungie have said they won't really talk about this in any more detail until 2024 now, so it's certainly going to be interesting to see, and let us know what you think of that whole idea down below. Final image I wanted to share right here though are some pretty cool weapons for the Final Shape. So looking at the skins on these, they actually have pretty cool kind of character art, and they're for different Guardian classes and Vanguard mentors by the look of it. But again, there was lots more info about the Final Shape in the breakdown yesterday, so at some point soon we will look to sort of break all of that down. For today though guys, that's what we have to speak about in this particular video, so as always I hope you've enjoyed it. Give us your initial impressions on Season of the Witch. Some of the activity content this season is pretty interesting, but we'll get our heads around that in the next few days, and of course we'll see how the seasonal content ages in the coming weeks. For today though, share your thoughts down below, and if you've enjoyed the video, a rating also really helps us out. Plus be sure to get subscribed and I'll keep you posted with more Destiny content. But otherwise, thank you for tuning in, and I hope you guys have an awesome day.